Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to BookTube at War. This is a new BookTube event for the month of July in 2023. It was thought up by a viewer, DDB, and made into a BookTube event by Michael K. Vaughan, the hostess with the mostest. And it's designed, as you might guess, to concentrate on military literature. Any kind. Military romances, military fiction, military science fiction or fantasy, wars that haven't happened yet, or that happened long ago in a galaxy far, far away, or memoirs, history, biography, that sort of thing. I have been loving this sort of stuff forever. I literally cut my reading teeth on the Iliad and the Aeneid, so it's no surprise that I would. And so I've been adding a BookTube at War choice to my night's reading, pretty much every night. And yesterday, in my video, I noted that a weird concentration seems to be developing by random chance in BookTube at War for me for 2023, and that is the War of 1812. A war that I know quite well because of one of the warships that fought in that war, that is currently berthed here in Boston. I know that warship quite well. It's odd, it wasn't what I was expecting, but one book has led me to another, and yesterday, when I was talking about Theodore Roosevelt's book on the Naval War of 1812, I mentioned that he and a historian named Hickey and a historian named Doughton, a lot of historians view the War of 1812 as a naval war, primarily a naval war, full of naval engagements that are wonderful to read about, wonderfully dramatic stuff. And I said in yesterday's video that that was quite right, that it was. And I got several emails from several of you who are watching in silence. You are not commenting on my videos. You are lurkers. I still have lurkers. After all this time, after 6,000 videos. Several of you wrote and said, you know, yes, the naval encounters in the War of 1812 do draw a lot of attention, but there were land encounters as well. There were plenty of land encounters, and there have been some great books on the subject. And one of you, to my eternal shame, reminded me that I love one of those accounts. I don't know why I forgot it. Maybe because I was concentrating so much on the naval side. One of you reminded me of Canada's great historian, P.R. Burton. He wrote 2 books that I have praised on this channel many, many, many times. I used to have the little UK mass market paperbacks that were imported to the United States. I had, there were 2 books, The Invasion of Canada and Flames Across the Border. And they were, the 2 of them together, P.R. Burton's write-up of the War of 1812, a great deal of which takes place on land. When I got that reminder, of course, I thanked the people involved. That's why I leave my email on every video, so that we can talk. So that we can write back and forth about all sorts of things, not just the books, not just things that I mentioned in my videos, but anything. You people write to me on all sorts of subjects. I am engaged now in dozens, if not hundreds, of correspondences with people. Most of you get the parameters. Most of you have understood them instinctively. Most people, I would argue, are good, decent, normal, ordinary, wonderful people. I would argue that's true no matter what the media wants us to believe about each other. Most of you understand that, despite my frequent comments about never wearing pants, I am pretty busy. I write for a living, and I like to keep myself nice and busy so that I don't ever get old. And so, A, if you write me a 5,000-word email, I'm probably not going to respond to it. And B, even if you write me a 500-word email, I might not respond right away. Most of you understand that, and are perfectly all right about it. Most of you understand that I am not insert a coin information machine, and that if you treat me that way, I'm not going to appreciate it. Most of you know better than to write me an email saying, here are 6 questions, answer them please. And if I think, I swallow my irritation and think, all right, well, this person might just not have any experience dealing with other human beings, so I'll just make a conversation out of one of these points. Point 3 is pretty interesting. Here's what I think about it. I'll write you a paragraph or 2. Most of you understand not to write back and say, good, excellent, what about the questions you missed? You're never going to hear from me again if you do that. I'm not here to do homework. And you ought to know better. An adult ought to know better. But 99.999% of you who write emails to me don't ever think that. You do know better. And most of you also understand that writing an email to a total stranger in order to browbeat or correct them, even if they're wrong, is an a-hole move. That is not acceptable in polite society, so most of you don't do it. So the people who wrote to me and just politely suggested, aren't you forgetting P.R. Burton? I heard his name on your channel. I learned about him through you. Aren't you forgetting his books? I thought, yes, I am forgetting his books. And I immediately got up, not immediately, because I had my little schnauzer curled up on top of me, and Frida had a rough day yesterday. She had an upset stomach, a little bit of diarrhea, a little bit of vomiting. She wasn't herself at all. She was kind of droopy for most of the day. I don't know what it was. The foremost candidate you would think would be the heat. Boston is currently in a heat wave. But it wasn't. Yesterday was the precursor to that heat wave. It wasn't hot. So I don't know what it is. She seems to be, as you could hear, that was her on the bed. She's going crazy because I'm not with her. But she's largely recovered. So, but once I dislodged her, I got up and thought, these emailers are completely right. Because these emails, this phenomenon of getting emails from you all is wonderful. We have an email correspondence. I have battered down the Protestant resistance that a lot of you have to receiving presents in the mail. I've battered that down, so I am free to mail a lot of you stuff, which is wonderful. And we have Voxer, so that when I have a chance and we can have a rambling, rousing Steve stream, we do. In other words, I'm getting a lot of what I want out of BookTube without BookTube, without YouTube involved at all, which is great. But when I read those emails, I thought, oh, well, of course, all right. So tonight's reread will be, at the very least, The Invasion of Canada. I may not have; they're not short books. I might not have time for both of them, but I can at least get my old UK mass market paperback of The Invasion of Canada and reread that for BookTube at War. And you'll never guess what. I don't own either of them. I love them. I've recommended them to millions of people, but I don't own those paperbacks anymore. Looked everywhere. Pulled a book out on one shelf at one case, and the books on the shelf above it were dislodged somehow and cascaded down onto my head, and they were all romance novels. Once again, I cursed the name of Sarah, the bookish knitter. But Pierre Burton's books? Nowhere to be found. Once upon a time, I even had hardcovers of both of those books that I found in a bookstore, I think, in Rhode Island. Nowhere to be found. Nowhere to be found. So I looked online. I naturally went online, and the first thing I saw was this. Pierre Burton's War of 1812, which is a 900-page paperback of the Invasion of Canada and Flames Across the Border, both books, in a big, fat trade paperback. Me, wanty. I don't have this thing. I didn't even know that it existed. I'm not sure that it was ever published in America. Me, wanty. Don't have this either. Needless to say, I don't have Pierre Burton writing about the War of 1812. So, believe it or not, that's what this BookTube at War dispatch is. It is one long kvetch about books that I don't have. I swear. I don't know why you people watch this channel. But even though I don't have these books, I still want to recommend them. Strongly recommend them. Even though I didn't get a chance to reread either one of them last night, Burton made a very specific decision with these two books, which do in part deal, there are naval battles all throughout here, but they do in part deal with combat actions on the Canadian border. The United States, or the nascent United States, or other the warring partners, the warring factions making war on the North American continent. The invasion of Canada, the annexation of Canada, was briefly contemplated. I think it's lucky for Canada that it never happened, because I'm not sure that Canada would have wanted 4 years of the President Donald Trump. But it did involve lots of land action. You get a lot of that in these books. But Pierre Burton decided with these two books to take a specific narrative approach, an exciting, you are there, vivid, novelistic narrative approach. It wasn't the way he always wrote. I've read almost everything this historian has ever written, even though most of his work is Canadian history, which is, of course, polite and boring. I've still read most of it, and most of it, the Arctic Grail, The Last Spike, they aren't like this. They aren't written like this at all. This is very much written in a vivid kind of way. Shards of wood flying up out of a cannonball splintered deck of a ship. Soldiers broiling in the sunlight or worrying about every shadow that moves in the deep woods. You get all of that. It's a very sensory book. Two books. Very sensory, very involving. I don't know how I forgot about it when I was talking about War of 1812 stuff. This is fantastic. And more than Roosevelt, more than Hickey, more even than Donham, This will grip you. Oh my God, will it grip you? You get a dramatis personae, exactly as if it were a fantasy novel. You get moments of heart-wrenching action. You get fantastic descriptions. This is popular history written in a way that I just love. Almost no historians can carry this off. And I'm perfectly willing to admit that, even about a lot of historians that I love. A lot of historians that I think are really, really good could not write this way if they wanted to. When the mood is on him, my beloved Bruce Catton can do it. But, for instance, this is a completely different diction, a completely different just prose style than my beloved Samuel Eliot Morison, for instance, or later historians that do great work, but don't write it like this. They're very much not writing it like this. So that's my BookTube at War report this time around. It's a complaint about books that I don't have. I don't have The Invasion of Canada or Flames Across the Border in those old UK mass market paperbacks, and I don't have this volume. Didn't even know it existed. I would say that it is going on my Amazon wish list, but I don't have one of those. So I'll just have to keep an eye. My Amazon wish list is The Brattle Will Provide. Sooner or later, The Brattle will turn up. Either those 2 volumes or hardcovers or the 1 volume. Sooner or later they will. I'm sure that if they did, I would have noticed it anyway. And maybe at that moment, when I saw them, the penny would have dropped and I would have thought, oh, wow, I don't actually have those. Now, at least, I know ahead of time. But anyway, it could still work as a recommendation. They are absolute. P.R. Burton writing on the War of 1812 is fantastic. So I strongly, strongly recommend it for BookTube at War. Maybe tonight I will actually concentrate on a book that I have instead of one that I don't have. So I will wrap this up for now, and I will see you then. Thank you, BookTube.